news platform.
Good evening and welcome to the show. Now, living amongst us are those with depression, anxiety, psychosis, PTSD, suicide ideation, postpartum depression, trauma from past abusers, and other undiagnosed mental health conditions. Oftentimes, we have absolutely no idea. Now, these mental health conditions are further exacerbated by other pressing issues, from financial issues to societal stigmatization. Now, this is why governments need to prioritize mental health and well-being. Tonight's topic of discussion is mental health as a policy priority. I'm so pleased to welcome to the studio consultant psychiatrist Dr. M. Ganesan. Dr. Ganesan, lovely to have you here in the studio once again.
Thank you very much.
My first question to you, Doctor, is the government invested enough in advancing mental health in Sri Lanka?
I would say no. We are not invested enough in mental health. I mean, we are investing in treating patients who come to the hospitals. We are doing that in a reasonably well-to-do manner, not too bad. But when it comes to prevention of mental health issues, some of the things that you talked about, trauma victims, war victims, people who are traumatized by the society, people who have faced trauma at home, what sort of services are we offering to prevent them from going into mental health issues? And how much are we helping people who are recovering from mental health issues to regain their life back? Not enough.
Let's speak about the budgetary allocation aspect as well.
The health budget itself in Sri Lanka, as you know, is very small. We don't know exactly how much gets spent on mental health, but some studies have suggested it as low as 1% of the health budget goes to mental health services, which is totally inadequate.
And the fact that with the current economic crisis, a lot of doctors are migrating, but also a lot of mental health professionals, and we have very few doctors who are specialized in these areas, right, Doctor?
Yeah, that's true. That is a problem. But when it comes to mental health problems, it's not just doctors we need. We need doctors, but we need psychologists, we need qualified counselors, we need qualified social workers. It's a team approach that we have. Unfortunately, we have a dearth of all the other specialities that I talked about.
Doctor, let's talk a bit about the importance of a good education system. The role of an education system is to bring up good citizens, responsible citizens. Is that currently happening?
No, this is a huge problem, right? When a child comes into the world, the initial 3-4 years it spends with the parents, and after that preschool and school starts. Parents themselves often do not have the capacity to bring up the children with the right values, talked about morality. Children just look at their parents, how they behave, and we try to copy that as children. Now, school is a place where we have a trained group of people who are dealing with the kids, who are in a position to talk to the child about their responsibilities to other humans, their responsibilities to society, responsibilities to themselves. How do we manage our emotions? What do I do when I get angry? Unfortunately, these things don't get taught in school. Schooling is about getting an education so I can find a job. So the school's main responsibility should be bringing up good citizens of the country who know what is the right thing to do, what is the bad thing to do. It's about littering, it's about voting, how you decide to select your representatives. So schools are places where they should start this. Have a class election for the monitor and ask the children, how are you going to decide whom to vote? Start a discussion around that. Have a discussion about taxes. Why do we need taxes, and why is it important to pay taxes? I mean, when these people grow up, people don't want to pay taxes. People vote based on, he's from my village, he belongs to my same caste, or he gave a job to our grandfather, based on those sort of things. Is that a way to elect a representative to the parliament or any other job? So creating right citizens The schools, I think, should play a much bigger role.
Dr. Ganesan, values such as kindness, empathy, compassion, and also joy, there is absolutely no focus on these in our education system, nowhere to be found, right?
I know. So if you talk to a kid about going to school, how many of them love to go to school? How many of them are interested to go to school? How many are happy when they hear teacher is on leave today? Right? What does that say about our education system? I mean, there was a program about child-friendly schools.
Okay.
I don't think that has gone very far. Unfortunately, schools have become other places where the children are put under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
In an unnecessary manner. Of course, bullying and harassment from other children when the child is different, those things are there. In addition to that, the whole system itself can be quite a traumatic experience.
So when we don't teach children to express their emotions, deal with their emotions, process their emotions, what we ultimately get is a society full of repressed, unhappy, violent, angry, miserable adults.
I know.
And we see the effects of this in society today. How dangerous is this? Why isn't anybody ringing the alarm bells, doctor? You meet hundreds of patients every single day. You treat hundreds of patients every day. Talk to us about how problematic this is.
It is a huge problem. Now, if you take our constitution and the laws are quite protective of women and all that. But still, roughly about 2/3 of families, there is domestic violence. And children grow up witnessing these things. They see their parents fighting, mothers getting beaten up. And what sort of mindset is that child going to have when they grow up? They are going to see this as, okay, this is the way a family is.
Yeah.
This is what the meaning of a family is. And so basically what we are doing is by bringing violence into the home, we are normalizing it. Right? And so it gets perpetuated from generation to generation. So unless we teach people how to manage their emotions, how to deal with sadness, how to deal with anger, of course there will be disagreements. But how do we talk out our disagreements? How do we discuss with somebody something that where we disagree without attacking each other in a personal manner? Without raising my voice? How am I going to put my point forward so that you understand what my point is, but not necessarily need to agree with it? Right? How do we bring that dialogue? We are not teaching that in schools. School should be the places where this is brought up.
Dr. Ganesan, if we can also discuss the gender dimension, because men are also victimized by the patriarchy itself, and also by the fact that that it is demonized to express emotions. It is the fact that tears are demonized. You have to be masculine and macho and strong and a provider to fit into that stereotypical definition of a male, when that's not true.
Absolutely. So just like women, men are also under huge amount of pressure because society expects them, or they feel they should behave in a particular way, though innately they don't feel comfortable about it. They have to put up an act which they feel is the right way a man should be. So from a very small childhood, boys are taught this is how a boy should be. Boy should not cry. Boy should show anger outside. Boy should not be passive. Boy should be aggressive. Unfortunately, as a boy, I may not want to do any of those things. Then I'm made to feel like I'm not man enough. And what does that do? It makes a lot of people unhappy. And then people take alcohol or drugs, and then they become violent, and they fit into that perception that was given to them as a child.
So in terms of finding resolution to all of this, doctor, what is the starting point?
The starting point is what we call our culture. lot of things that were given to us by the colonizers, by the British and the Dutch, a few hundred years ago, we call it our culture, and we are stuck to it somehow. Unless we move from that, find out our culture, maybe a few thousand years ago, how diverse it was, how tolerating it was, how accepting it was.
Yeah.
Because we are lost in this concept of culture. And we think, oh no, it's cultural. So any change is resisted, putting this culture forward, and that becomes a huge barrier. So we need to first overcome that barrier and understand what we call our culture today is an amalgamation of all sorts of things. Victorian era Britain, Dutch colonizers before that, Portuguese before that, maybe other colonizers before that.
Right.
I mean, that is what a culture is. It keeps evolving.
Sure.
That's fine. So getting stuck in one point and drawing a line, this is our culture, this is not our culture, so we are not going to do that, is one way that we block progress, we block growth, we block happiness.
Yeah. Let's also take an example of how we allow interpretations of culture to limit us, to keep us stuck in these unhappy places. For example, we have women who are trapped in toxic, abusive marriages. They have kids and they are reluctant to move out of the marriage, saying, what will society say? I can't bring shame on my family, right? So, and this is very commonplace. Give us some examples so that we can also sort of comprehend this.
Home is a place where everybody is supposed to feel safe. Okay, there is some risk on the roads, I agree, right? Whichever country, wherever we go. But home is some place, it's my own. This is my safe place. When I come home, I feel very completely relaxed, very safe. In an environment of domestic violence, that safety also is gone, right? And that creates a huge amount of anxiety, a huge amount of fear. And that chronic stress invariably leads to mental health consequences like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, some of the things you said. And when we are angry, when we are unhappy, we take it out on other people. So the mother who is a victim of domestic violence is going to take it out on the children, right? And the children, when they see this, it's going to affect them very, very badly. And we know children who grow up in a domestic violence environment are much more prone to depression when they grow up.
Yeah.
Right? So these should be things that we address, and these should not be addressed. Now, like you said, at the stage when a woman is in a bad marriage and she's suffering every day, but she is so scared to come out of it because how society perceives it. At whatever cost, the marriage has to be maintained. They hide the violence, they don't talk about it outside. For the outside world, she shows that, she's happily married and damaging herself and the future generation that are going to come. So, one, how do we train children not to be perpetrators of violence at home? How do we train children to say, no, stop, you can't hit me, that is not acceptable, right? How do we train children to deal with it when it actually happens? It is going to happen to some extent. How do we train children how to deal with it when it happens? Are we teaching that? Are we talking about it? No. So when a woman gets into a marriage or a man gets into a marriage and first time they have a disagreement, an argument, they don't know how to deal with it. So they just practice what they saw when they were kids.
Yeah.
Right? So they are put into an environment where they don't know how to handle those emotions. And then aggression comes out, and then aggression escalates because the woman doesn't see that she has a way out, and she tolerates, and it just escalates.
So this also ties in with the concept of intergenerational trauma, where my grandfather hit my father hit me, so will I also hit my children? But I have the option and the knowledge to say, no, the violence ends with me. right? So that's very important, breaking that cycle of intergenerational trauma.
Absolutely. Who is responsible for breaking that trauma? Because I have seen my father do it, and then I am going to do it. To get me thinking, was it necessary? Is there another way I can discipline my child? Is there another way I can talk to my child and overcome this particular whatever problem that I am facing? Unless we teach that to people, we are going to automatically follow what I saw my father do.
Yeah.
That is the problem. Who is responsible for doing that? What are the mechanisms we have for doing that?
Yeah.
We don't.
After this commercial break, let's talk about some of the tools that we ourselves can adopt, some of the learnings that we can do. We're in conversation with consultant psychiatrist Dr. M. Ganesan. We're going for a break. We'll be right back.
The People's Platform. Education, an invaluable asset that can never be taken away from you. Laying the foundation stone for a new library building for the students of Nakia Tenian Udagama, aiming to open new doors for a brighter future. Gamnanda, for the people, by the people. The People's Platform.
Welcome back. My guest tonight is consultant psychiatrist Dr. M. Ganesan. We're discussing mental health as a policy priority. Dr. Ganesan, there's this Latin phrase called memento mori, remember you must die. I feel like we all completely forget that we're only here for a short period of time and that we're all going to die. And I feel like if we could keep remembering that we are here for a short time, so we need to live a life of meaning, purpose, and joy, and community, I feel like we could have better lives.
Absolutely. Reflection and spending a little time to think about, where am I? What am I doing? What is going to happen to me? Where am I wanting to go? Unfortunately, people have little time to think now, especially with our devices. So some time to reflect on the day. Was I very upset about something? Was it something that I should get upset about? Or did I get upset unnecessarily because that was not so serious? So putting things in perspective is very important.
How must we go about incorporating a simpler life? Because if we take our parliament, for example, and successive parliaments, we see a culture of impunity largely. We see a culture of thuggery, hooliganism, and I feel like a lot of our elected representatives forget that they're here for a purpose, they're here to serve the citizenry. So I feel like this lesson on memento mori would really be important for people like that.
It's important for everybody, right?
Of course.
Unfortunately, again, how we select somebody to represent me in the parliament, right? So I'm supposed to vote for somebody who is going to reflect my values, my morality, my ethics at a, national stage in a small group, because all of us cannot go to the parliament and talk.
Yeah.
But is that how I decide to vote for somebody in Sri Lanka? Is that how we are deciding to vote for somebody in Sri Lanka? Right? So, like you said, we are caught up in these little battles and little animosities, little angers. And we forget there is a bigger picture, right? And we are small actors in that.
Yeah.
And we forget that. And kind of feel a sense of omnipotence and feel that, you know, you are very important, and unfortunately we fall for that trap. Right? I mean, yes, in a feudal society, people are going to praise you. Anybody in a higher position, they are going to praise them, they are going to elevate them to a higher position, they are going to talk about them all the time. To gobble that up as the truth is a major mistake that many of our leaders make. Not just at a national level, even like schools, local levels, you know, principals, local government officials, business people, all feel this because of that feudal mindset. People talk good about you all the time.
Right.
Unless you have a reflective mind and understand, okay, they are saying this because of the feudal system, not just because I'm great or anything.
Right.
Having ourselves grounded in the reality that, like you said, end of the day, all of us are going to die, and maybe 1 or 2 generations people will talk, the grandchildren will talk, and after that, you know, it's just forgotten.
In Sri Lanka, we are unfortunately only too familiar with the terrible effects of divisiveness. And I remember this quote from Merchant of Venice: "If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge?" This divisiveness that is such a powerful political tool that is used against us to divide us. I feel like if we were more in tune with our consciousness, with our emotions, it would be a little bit harder to fool us, to dupe us collectively.
That's another problem that we have. Again, I'm harking back to the education system. How we divide our children. You know, Tamil, Hindu boys' school, Sinhala Muslim girls' school. Very few people have friends across these ethnic, religious, regional divides. So sad that they grow up without any friends. Sri Lanka is such a small country, and we have communities most of the time everywhere. You know, bringing them together as children, right? I mean, religion is only, out of the 40 subjects in the school for a week, only 2 are for religion. Why not we can't have a Buddhist teacher, Hindu teacher, and a Christian teacher and an Islamic teacher in his school? Or why can't one teacher teach all 4 religions, like other countries do? Right? So, dividing schools based on religion, we don't need it. Even dividing schools based on language, we don't need it. Right? So, unless we bring children together at an early age, because what they hear in the communities, the older generations are stuck in that mindset, very ethno-nationalistic, religious kind of a mindset. Getting them out of that is going to be a major challenge. At least the next generation, if we want them to think as Sri Lankans, we are one. Of course, we are all going to be different based on where we are, which part of Sri Lanka we grow, everything. We are going to be different, that's fine. But we are all one. To give that sense, children must be able to interact with other children, children with disabilities, boys and girls studying in the same school, you know, different ethnicities, different religious groups. I mean, if we want to do this, we do have the resources to do this. But it is the political will and this barrier of overcoming our culture thing. These are the challenges that we have.
Right. Doctor, let's talk about some of the tools that we can adopt. So a lot of people face anxiety due to work pressure, pressure from home, all sorts of pressure, and they can't cope because they don't have the tools within themselves or the knowledge or the skill set to be able to calm themselves down. as a result, what happens is this manifests itself as either high blood pressure or diabetes or obesity, being overweight, all of that, sedentary lifestyle. So talk to us about some of the tools that we can adopt.
One of the important things is having proper sleep. Right? Unfortunately, with light, electricity and devices and all sorts of things and working times, our sleep patterns have changed. Unfortunately, our body and brain is tuned to sleep at night. And we should sleep at night. And sleep continuously for 7 to 8 hours in a 24-hour period.
Right.
How many of us are doing that? That's number one. 2, eating. Having a healthy dieting plan. Many people miss their breakfast because they have to come rushed to office. And as you know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Right? And again, meal times. Many of them have their lunch at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, if at all. Right? That's not healthy at all. Having proper meal times, having some form of exercise. We need to fit them into our lifestyles. We may not get extra time, but cycling to work or walking part of the distance before catching the bus or whatever. So we need to incorporate that into it. And also, our children can be major stress relievers. If we play with our children, it relaxes us. So when young families come with stress and all that, and sometimes they come with their children. So I would ask the boy, 4 years, is your mama good at batting or bowling? And the boy looks at me with surprise and, what's this doctor asking? Because mama has never played cricket with a child. Right? And entering the child's world and playing games that they want to play at their level can be a major, very important, useful stress reliever. Right? And avoiding substances. Smoking, drinking, substances increase our stress levels. And devices. Yes, we all need to use them, but at least learn to limit it for some time. Watching YouTube videos at 1 o'clock in the morning is definitely not healthy. And we know that it leads to anxiety, and if it persists, it can lead to depression and other health conditions as well. So there are simple things that we can do. And also have good hobbies where it takes our mind away from your day-to-day work life. So it can be reading a book, maybe doing a small garden, having a few pets. There are easy ways of, engaging your mind so that we can forget about the stressful things, at least for a short time, and focus on something that we enjoy. So these are some things that we can focus.
My final question, doctor, for someone who's thinking, okay, this conversation makes sense. I have a lot of problems. I would like to consult a mental health professional, but I'm afraid. Or what if someone sees me going to the psychiatrist or the psychologist? So could you just demystify the fear and stigma surrounding going to a psychiatrist, going to a psychologist? I mean, if someone comes to meet you, what are you going to do? Are you going to prescribe lots and lots of medicines, which is going to make it really difficult for the patient to manage his or her normal life?
Yes. So a consultation with a professional is always a two-way process, right? So we come to a concordance. The client's wishes are always respected. Nobody is ever going to force medication on anybody. Right? You always have a choice to discuss with the doctor or psychologist, what sort of therapy you want, what sort of services you want. Right? And that is your right as a doctor. Doctor is not there. Doctor or psychologist or counselor is not there to dictate things to you. As an individual, you have a right when it comes to your body and mind. And you need to put forward, yes, doctor, I listen to what you say, but this is what I want. Is there some other way that I can avoid medication and do this? then you can have a discussion with the doctor, why the medication is necessary or why it is not necessary, what other changes you can bring to the lifestyle. So going to the doctor doesn't mean that you obey the orders of the doctors. It's not like that. So we need to get that out of our system.
Yeah.
And also, it has nothing to do with strength of the mind. A lot of people come and say, Doc, I thought I was strong and I know I will get this. It has nothing to do with strong. Right? So there are a lot of so-called strong people have had mental health issues.
Of course.
Right? Winston Churchill had depression. Right? The man who led Britain out of the Second World War. So there are thousands and thousands of people. It's just nothing to do with strength of the mind. This is just a disorder that can happen to anybody. So there's nothing to be ashamed of it. There's nothing wrong with it. You get the help, get out, and lead a happy life.
All right, fantastic. I have so many more questions, but we're out of time. I hope we could have a follow-up conversation during the next few months. Dr. M. Ganesan, thank you so much for your service. Thank you, Doctor, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching us. Good night.